The phrase, "war is hell," despite how true it is, has become one of the more cliched and often meaningless lines in fiction, as the ever-growing catalog of war stories continues to emphasize the spectacle of battle and heroic sacrifice, rather than the realities of war itself. This is a problem that the Gundam franchise has faced ever since its inception. Tomino had been railing on the war is bad narrative since the very first series, but due to a wide variety of reasons, this message inevitably gets a bit muddled by all the cool mobile suits engaging in epic space battles. I don't think this was necessarily bad for the series overall, and there are some moments where this message does shine through, but these conflicting desires do make it a bit more difficult to get this message across. 3 TV series and a movie later, Gundam breaks into the OVA market with Gundam 0080 War in the Pocket, a series that completely wipes away any ambiguity in regards to the war is bad mentality, while also adding on a few extra ideas to give even more weight to that central concept. It's very rare for a series to have me totally enraptured in the first minute alone, but War in the Pocket's opening scene easily does just that. The cold open on a Zeon submarine, eventually accompanied by synth ambiance in the lower register, inspires a heavily ominous and foreboding feeling. Not outright dangerous or hostile, but enough to keep the viewer on the edge of their seat to see what's about to happen. At around the 2-minute mark, that droning ambiance resolves into a triumphant major chord as the Zeon Spec Ops team moves to engage in their mission, with this tone shift possibly intended to convey the emotions of said team as they embark on what they believe to be an easy mission. This music quickly fades away once the battle begins, however, replaced by sirens and explosions until a darker, more aggressive battle track kicks in. One that does not sound happy or triumphant in any way, so the tension remains high throughout the fight. Additionally, the animation is also markedly different from what we've seen before with this franchise. It isn't just that the battle animation is of a higher quality because Gundam is finally becoming a household name, or because it's an OVA from the 80s, but also that the style in which the battles are drawn is much more visceral and intense. These mobile suits don't look like giant robots when they move, they look like people. The way the GM's finger continues to hold down the trigger even after it's been shot to pieces, the Gogue using a GM as a body shield after it slumps over dead, then firing through it to hit another enemy, the way mobile suits just slouch down against a wall after they're destroyed. These motions feel very human, thus reminding us that these aren't just remote-controlled robots being destroyed. There are real living people inside these mobile suits dying in horrific ways. And if you didn't get that through these motions, they make sure to drill it into your head when we see one of the Zeon pilots get his brains splattered across the cockpit. While this might not be the most outright disturbing moment in Gundam up to this point, it is certainly the most directly graphic and bloody, and definitely not a one-off instance for this OVA. As the squad leader holds his dead comrade in his arms and screams to the sky, the sequence ends with another major chord echoing the triumphant attitude they had before entering the battle. A purposefully ironic musical statement considering that their mission ended in utter failure, almost as though the show is mocking them. Cinematics aside, the narrative itself also has some pretty strong words about war, which it conveys through its rather unlikely protagonist. If I had to pick what most people complain about with War in the Pocket, it's that they didn't want to deal with an 11-year-old as the primary main character in a mecha anime, but this complaint misses the entire point of what War in the Pocket was striving for. Yes, Alfred is an annoying, spoiled brat who thinks being a soldier would be the coolest thing in the world, and that's the entire point. He doesn't understand what war is really like, which is why he acts so flippant and carefree about it, as do the rest of the children in this series. It reminds me of a vague memory from my own childhood. I was in first grade when 9/11 happened. I had absolutely no idea what was going on outside of seeing the image of a smoking skyscraper on my TV, followed by my mom telling me that school was canceled. Fast forward a year to the first anniversary of 9/11, and I distinctly remember asking why we don't have school off again like we did last year. Kids who don't have context for this kind of violence don't understand it, and only recognize the parts that directly affect what they care about at the moment. In the same way that running through the aftermath of the first battle in the series and seeing how much was destroyed leaves very little impression on Alfred, but hearing that school will be cancelled for the day literally has him jumping out of his seat with joy. The true story of War in the Pocket is Alfred discovering that being a soldier is not glamorous and that war is nothing to be excited about. And boy, do they lay it on thick. In the first episode, we see Alfred slacking off on his homework by playing video games. After he gets annoyed with his mother for interrupting him, he purposefully destroys all the virtual buildings rather than the monsters in order to vent his anger until he gets a game over. A very obvious signifier of Alfred's ignorance towards the realities of war. Things slowly begin to escalate after he joins the same Zeon Spec Ops team from earlier, who have now infiltrated Side 6 in order to discover the location of the Federation's hidden base. For a while, it seems like all fun and games, as Alfred's innate curiosity and cleverness manage to get him useful information that the team uses to plan their assault. Once the actual conflict starts, however, the whole plan goes completely south because of a mistake made by the newest member of the squad, Bernie Wiseman, and everyone except Bernie and Alfred end up dying violently. And yes, they really did give him the most ironic last name possible just to make sure you got the point. With this bloody defeat hanging over him, Alfred slowly comes to terms with the reality of what he's gotten into. He's paying attention to the aftermath and experiences a sense of dread when a dead child is pulled from a pile of rubble, reminding him that he could end up just like that. However, it isn't until the death of Bernie, whom Alfred had grown close to over the course of the series, and the near death of his friend Christina that he fully begins to understand the tragedies of war and falls into a state of shock. While Alfred is certainly a much more mature individual as the result of these experiences, I'd hesitate to say that it was worth the struggle, and he would definitely have been spared this extreme emotional torment if he had just steered clear of the Zeon invaders and his delusions of becoming a soldier. That's not to say that Zeon is the only side to blame in this conflict. While not as openly hostile or aggressive, the Federation acts just as shady as Zeon throughout War in the Pocket. It's eventually discovered that the Federation had secretly been testing a new Gundam on Side 6 without Side 6 having officially allied with the Federation yet. This was the entire reason for Zeon sneaking into Side 6 and instigating a conflict that killed nearly 250 innocent civilians. The Federation could have easily sent the new Gundam to be tested at a colony that was already under Federation jurisdiction, but because they were growing more desperate for control and wanted to edge Zeon out of neutral territories, their actions ended up causing a massacre on a colony that hadn't even taken a side yet. The next day, the Gundam's pilot, Christina, is interviewed by a Side 6 investigator. After being grilled by the investigator for the Federation's behavior I just mentioned, Christina states that more people would have died if she didn't stop the Zeon assault and that the casualties couldn't be helped. To which the investigator responds,
言いたいことはわかるがね。死んでも仕方のない人間なんてのは一人だっていないんだ。数の問題じゃないよ。
Yes, more people might have died if she hadn't stopped the attack, but no one would have died if the Gundam wasn't there in the first place because Zeon would have no reason to be there. Side 6 would not be clearing away rubble and picking up bodies if these two warring powers had just stayed the hell away. And yet, even in the face of tragedy with literally hundreds of people dying in a single night, the people of Side 6 must continue to move forward. In many ways, it's almost as though the battle didn't even happen. People are still going to work, kids still go to the arcade, and Christmas shopping seems totally unimpeded. Yes, many people died or were severely injured, but this event wasn't enough to upend their society, so many people go on about their day as usual. There's nothing they can personally do to stop the war, so it's business as usual for the average citizen of Side 6. In a way, it reminds me a lot of a quote from Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five. In response to Vonnegut telling someone he's writing an anti-war book, another character responds that he might as well be writing an anti-glacier book, meaning that it's about as easy to stop a war as it is to stop a glacier. To the average person, war cannot be stopped. It can only be survived and dealt with, a message that War in the Pocket seems to acknowledge to at least some degree. Hell, one of the last lines of the series is one of Alfred's classmates assuring him that there'll be another war someday. A rather frightening thing to say considering what's transpired over the course of the series. And then we get to that last episode, and I'll be honest, I got a little bit nervous. For roughly the first half of the episode, it almost looks like they were about to overturn everything I've just discussed so far, and try to end on a more triumphant note where Bernie and Alfred stop a nuke that a Zeon commander had planned to drop on Side 6. They even have a whole montage of them setting up traps and planning out how they're gonna destroy the Gundam that Bernie had been sent to stop in the first place. Had this actually been what happened, it would have completely ruined the entire point of this OVA's narrative. Instead, the story does an abrupt U-turn at the last minute and layers on the fuck yous so thick you can practically see it written on the screen. As it turns out, the ship carrying the nuke was stopped by the Federation before it even made it to Side 6, which means that Bernie no longer has a reason to destroy the Gundam. But Alfred can't get this information to Bernie in time before he engages the Gundam, and after a protracted battle, Bernie is killed for no reason other than a foolhardy hope that he could make a difference in this war. In fact, he ends up making the situation worse for everyone involved, and his reward is being turned into, as a background Federation soldier so bluntly puts it, a pile of hamburger. War is hell. It's such an easy phrase to repeat without giving any real thought to. As luck would have it, however, I came across a rather enlightening clip from the TV series MASH while writing this script that significantly shifted my direction of thought on this matter.
Well, everybody knows war is hell.
War isn't hell. War is war and hell is hell. And of the two, war is a lot worse.
How do you figure that, Hawkeye?
Easy, Father. Tell me, who goes to hell?
Sinners, I believe.
Exactly. There are no innocent bystanders in hell. But war is chock full of them. Little kids, cripples, old ladies. In fact, except for a few of the brass, almost everybody involved is an innocent bystander.
War isn't hell. It's not some abstract place that only bad people get involved in. It's not the setting for an action spectacle that children should aspire to be part of when they grow up, and it's not some playtime activity filled with cool toys that a boy can keep in his pocket to pull out whenever he wants to play hero. War is real, and it affects everybody it touches, often in the most horrific manner imaginable. And War in the Pocket conveys this message more effectively than almost any other war story I've consumed up to this point. In regards to its structure, theming, and cinematic elements, it's something that I would most closely associate with classic literature, and it's definitely a series you should check out when you have the chance. Thanks for watching the inaugural episode of Break the Backlog, the series where my patrons get to pick a series from my backlog for me to watch and make a video about every month. This reward is available to all of my $3 and up patrons, with polls usually being held sometime in the first half of the month preceding the month in which the video will be released. The poll for April's video is now live, so be sure to stop in and vote if you love my content and want to support me directly. Special thanks to Jan Rogalski, Rorkton Joing, Christine Seibert, Tim Johnson, Call Me Catlord, Ember's fave roommate, Eugenio Mendoza, and all my other patrons for their generous support. My name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.